74 degrees our temperature reading in Lincoln now, and this is the Lee Thomas Show. Music designed for the night people of Lincoln in mind. We have music right up until 12 midnight for you. Mr. Jimmy Rogers and Tucum Carey.
Good evening. This is J. Marshall Stewart. We're here tonight to honor my friend and mentor, Lee Thomas. In fact, Lee hired or rehired me 5 times at 2 different stations between 1968 and 1988. Lee came from Denver, where he grew up in the 1940s and 50s listening to legendary radio stations like KOA and Kim. During high school, Lee worked at a couple of small Denver stations and soon discovered he could have all that fun and get paid for it. Higher education, which would become an ongoing pursuit, brought Lee to Lincoln and Nebraska Wesleyan University. In January 1959, Lee accepted a job as night announcer at KLMS, a decision that set the course for the next 27 years of his life.
Those were the days when you had to chase the check to the bank in order to get paid, to be sure, because they didn't have enough money. They did the programming from downtown until 6 o'clock, and then we took over at the transmitter at 6.
Within months, NBA Hall of Famer and Nebraska radio pioneer Howard Schuman closed the downtown studios, switched KLMS to Top 40, and Lincoln's music station was born.
Yeah, and I never did hear how it all happened, where he brought in Norm Gittleson. But he knew what we needed to do, which was to go Top 40. He hired a guy by the name of Bob Dean, real name Bob Moomey, and Bob was my mentor. And in June 1st, 1959, the station switched over to Top 40.
When you're in the mood for good music and news, it's Lincoln's LMS you will choose.
Lee rose through the ranks at KLMS, but it was as program manager that Lee had his biggest impact on the Lincoln market.
I came to KFMQ from Coyle in Omaha in 1973.
Painfully aware of Lee's presence in the market was management of our young adult competitor, album rocker KFMQ.
And year after year, we always wondered, what was Lee Thomas coming up with a marketing tool to promote the ratings? And I knew after 1 year it was going to be sales tied, and it would be a revenue generator, an audience generator, and a marketing tool. And every year he would beat us like a drum and just hammer us.
In fact, Lee's 1975 multimedia KLMS Hits Me Right campaign took the Best of Show honors at the Lincoln Advertising Club's annual awards banquet.
It was the spring of 1975. The KLMS hitmen were conspiring to pull the biggest job in their history. And a bumper sticker, yes, a mere bumper sticker, made anyone a prospective target of the prize-heavy hitmen. Where will it all end? Who'll stop this outburst of generosity?
Ain't nobody gonna get in our way, because now, more than ever, KLMS hits you right.
In a medium-sized stepping stone market like Lincoln, one of Lee's biggest challenges was finding and retaining good air talent, and things didn't always work out.
And you hire on the basis of an audition tape. One day, I had hired this guy, and I was on the air, and Carl Lewis, the engineer, something had gone wrong with the board, which happened fairly regularly. So Carl was in there, and he was in the engineer position, which was knees planted on the desk and bent over, ass in the air. Pardon me, can I say that on the air?
You just
did. I just did. Okay, and everything is rolling along, and all of a sudden the record ended, and so the only way that I could get to the board was to reach through Carl's legs and flip the switch. It was at this point that this new guy appeared. For the first time, knowing nothing about KLMS, walks in, takes one look at what's going on, and turns, I never forget the guy's expression, turns on his heel, walked out. I heard the peal of rubber in the parking lot, and we never saw him again.
In 1973, with an eye toward selling KLMS, Howard Schuman built and equipped new studios near 48th and Randolph. This was quite a departure for Lee and chief engineer Carl Lewis, who had become used to the frugal Mr. Schuman.
A lot of people don't know that Howard Schuman was the founder of KFOR. And then over World War II, he got into the scrap business.
Yes, the
whole radio station. The towers were way overbuilt. Those 5 towers out there could withstand, I think, 250-mile-an-hour winds because they came from Greenland. The transmitter was, the story goes, from a beach in Hawaii.
Really?
That in point of fact, if you looked in there, it had suffered salt damage because it was.
Within a year, a deal was struck with Iowa-based Woodward Communications to buy KLMS, a standalone 1,000-watt AM, for $1 million.
We knew as a corporation that it was very, very well programmed and that it had great ratings and the sales potential was not even scratched.
Woodward management was aware that Lee was a big asset to them, and they were determined to keep him happy.
Well, Lee, of course, immediately asked for a raise and got it. Lee had the programming together. He was on the air when we bought it. We immediately took Lee off the air, and he spent full-time enhancing and improving the sound of KLMS, and he did a marvelous, marvelous job.
Throughout his years at KLMS, Lee acted as mentor to young broadcasters, grooming them for future jobs at the station.
He encouraged me to get a full-time job in radio, go to a small town and get it all figured out, and so that's what I did. I went to North Platte, KODY in North Platte. But he encouraged me to send him air checks, and he typed out his critique of those air checks for me, and it just never failed that whenever one of those would come in the mail, I had the critique of the air check in one hand, and I had to have a dictionary in the other hand to try to figure out exactly what the heck it was he was saying.
At a 2005 reunion, Lee reflected on his KLMS days.
The only thing that I guess if I did anything right, it was I knew how to hire talent. I guess I knew how to, because we had a tremendous number of great people that worked for KLMS, and that's what made it. It wasn't me, it was all you people, and it was a great radio station, and I thank you for the experience.
Even though KLMS was Lincoln's music station, Lee knew the importance of news to the target audience. KLMS had live studios at the city, county, and state capitol buildings. The 6-person news team had the ability to cover news from wherever it was happening, and the recognition of their peers.
David Aarons for KLMS, Nebraska Associated Press News Station of the Year.
Newscast, and it was the Nebraska Associated Press News Station
of the Year.
Thank you, Harley. Thank you, Lee Thomas.
Lee's on-air movie reviews, which aired exclusively on KLMS, had a real impact on Lincoln's movie-going public.
Robert De Niro is Travis Bickle, ex-Marine, a man alone in a city of millions. It's not a new idea. Scorsese's character is searching for an identity and something to make life worthwhile, and there's nothing in sight. Prepare yourself to be utterly repelled and intensely impressed, and it certainly merits our grade A+.
Woodward Communications' attitude was, if you can't beat the competition, buy them. In February 1979, KFMQ became KLMS's sister station, with Lee Thomas named operations manager for both stations.
We knew, both of us, that if we were to survive and do the performance bottom line for the corporation, that the AM days were limited.
To say the least, KFMQ staffers were skeptical about the man who had been the epitome of AM Top 40 radio in Lincoln for 20 years, having a say in how their AOR station was programmed and marketed.
It was almost like a morning, and programming was just mortified. But in reality, it was probably one of the best things that happened to KFMQ. Lee had a great knowledge of the market. They had a great knowledge of the audience, and quite frankly, a lot faster than I thought, won the programming staff over.
After a stint as general manager for both stations in the mid-'80s, Lee stepped down to resume programming KLMS. But in the face of declining AM radio listenership and changes in upper management at the corporate level, after nearly 3 decades of leadership at KLMS, Lee met the fate of many seasoned radio veterans. Little did headquarters back in Dubuque know that Lee already had a plan that included some of his Woodward co-workers, including me.
He came to me with an idea of buying a local radio station.
After I left the corporation, Lee and I were going to buy a station together, and we couldn't find anything that was compatible, and we were both still looking. Lee found this. Lee did the engineering, knew what the frequency could do, knew what format. It was Lee's deal.
Ultimately, 4 of us did purchase the radio station, and we didn't have to worry about it. We knew Lee would do it right. We turned the station off the air. We had 1 phone call. That was it, 1 phone call. 3 months later, we put the station on the air, came out of the blocks with a classic Corvette giveaway. The first day we were sold out, and the first month we actually made a profit and never looked back from there. Going into the ratings period, Lee launched the direct mail piece, and that was so successful that approximately 3 months, or whenever the ratings actually came out, the station was #1 in the market, 25 to 49, going from 1 listener to top in the market. None of that would have happened without Lee.
In just 3 short years, Lee and his partners sold KLDZ for a substantial return on their investment.
Well, we were greedy and we wanted to make money. We knew that it was a way to make some capital. That was our intention, and it worked.
It was at this point in his life, with a master's degree already in hand, that Lee decided to complete requirements for his PhD in communications at the University of Nebraska Lincoln. Today, Dr. Lee Thomas has spent the past 15 years educating, and yes, mentoring communications students on the Crete campus of Doane College. One of his students, 2009 graduate Ziad Jabbour, was one of only 6 out of 1,500 students nationwide to be selected this year as an NBC News associate in New York.
I'm an econ major. I never really thought I'd be getting into this, but it's something I love to do. And he said that, just go ahead and do it. And that's what I'm doing. So I can thank Dr. Thomas for that.
He's definitely an interesting person when it comes to things, like even when you're talking to him about something, that has nothing to do with your position at the radio station or any faculty advice. There's always something that you can talk to him about, whether it's movies or politics or something. He's always got his point of view on the subject.
He's a very tough professor, very tough, but you learn a lot from his classes.
And it was Introduction to Mass Communications, and I remember the first day when we came to class, he said, are you a communications major or a journalism major? If not, why are you here? And if you don't really have that good of a reason, you might want to leave because it's going to get pretty intense. And it was kind of intimidating to walk into class, the first class in college, and hear those words from your first ever professor.
Another passion of Lee's is astronomy. He helped found Lincoln's Hyde Observatory, where he continues on the Board of Supervisors, and is past president and an active member of the Prairie Astronomy Club. Lee even traveled to Siberia, Russia in July 2008 to observe the total eclipse of the sun. Dr. Lee Thomas, radio air personality, program manager, station owner, and educator for over 50 years, and a man who has been a mentor and friend to hundreds of young men and women whose lives he has touched over the years. When asked for a personal comment on this occasion of Lee's induction into the Hall of Fame, longtime colleague and business partner Harley Lampman had this to say.
But I recall the first Hall of Fame induction was Mr. Schumann that owned KLMS when we bought it. And Mr. Schumann was up at his age, kind of stumbling around, but certainly did a good job. And Lee turned to me and he said, well, if we live long enough, we'll all get in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Lee.
Every head is nodding, eyes are blinking. Each kilocycle's winking too. Now we'd like to take this one little moment
to say goodnight
from Lincoln's KLMS